Yo, what is good, everybody? Welcome into the Free Money Show here and another edition of Win Total Wednesdays, the second episode here so far. The first was in the Big Ten with Northwestern under 3.5. This one, we now head out west to the Pac-12 and the Washington State Cougars. In Pullman, the Cougars are coming off of a 7-5 season and new coach Jake Dickert's first full season as head coach. They were led by Cam Ward in his first season in FBS after transferring from FCS school Incarnate Word down in Texas. His stats were a step down from what he did over at Incarnate Word, but that is to be expected in a new system and at the FBS level. On offense, he will be helped by returning running back Nakia Watson, 769 yards with 9 touchdowns last season, to go with 296 receiving yards and 4 reception touchdowns. So a dual threat option for him and someone that he can rely on. And running back 2, Jalen Jenkins, also had a good season, 396 rushing yards, a touchdown, and 2 reception touchdowns. However, this offense will have to replace their top 4 wide receivers and the bulk of the wide receiver talent. They brought in transfers and new recruits in hopes to provide options for Cam Ward. Wide receiver Kyle Williams will be there to help and I think have a good season, along with tight end recruit from last year, Dollar, to provide a big target for Ward, and has improved and played really well in spring ball. Washington State will need to improve if the program wants to maintain or improve upon 7 wins from last season. Pac-12 is sneaky, the second deepest conference in college football this season. Great quarterbacks, great offenses, great coaches, and Washington State will have to improve upon that in order to maintain their spot in the hierarchy. They were 92nd in average line yards last season from the offensive line and really good in passing downs. Top 30 in passing downs, line yards, and a big regression, 118th on standard down line yards. And on top of that, they're going to have to replace 2 starters. The left tackle, Pole, former Cougar standout of brother Tony Pole, and an experienced JUCO standout that comes to this program, helping to protect the blind side for Cam Ward. Along with the other starter they have to replace, right guard Nkanu, comes from Southern Utah and played 12 games there last season and will be sandwiched in between 2 experienced starters in the center and the right tackle position. And you got to be really good on the margins, and that's what the kicker does for them as well. Janikowski, no relation to Sebastian Janikowski, but had a great season and 11th best field goal percentage in the country. New offensive coordinator Ben Arbuckle was maybe the most important piece to this offense to push them to the next pedestal this season. He led Western Kentucky to the 11th highest scoring offense in the country, and he will be able to help Ward take that next step in year 2. He loves to pass, especially with a quarterback like Ward. Last season at Western Kentucky, they averaged 45 passes a game. And not to mention an efficient yards per rush, 5.1, 19th best in the country. And on defense, we'll stay with the D-line. A decent sack rate, 5.93 of defensive snaps ended up in sacks, 73rd best. And the defensive line returns 2 starters. Not many stats to boast, but luckily they kept Brennan Jackson, 41 tackles, 12 of them tackles for loss, 3 PBUs, pass breakups, and 1 forced fumble. The linebacker room is thin, bringing in 2 transfers to be the starters in this 4-2-5 system that the new DC is going to run. Linebacker Ahmad McCullough from Maryland, 45 tackles, 1 sack, and 2 fumble recoveries, as well as Longhorn linebacker Devin Richardson coming over from Texas, who had an incredible 2019 season, but has yet to replicate that since, with some injuries and other things, COVID, all those things that happened in the past couple seasons. This Cougar defense got turnovers, though, 21 total last season. you're going to have to expect a bit of regression from that total, but a lot of that production from turnovers returns, mainly the DBs. The DBs were the primary position group getting the turnovers, and a lot of them are returning this season. Both safeties return. Lockett the third, 3 interceptions, a fumble recovery. Hicks, another safety, one interception and 1 fumble recovery. And DB Smith Wade, 2 interceptions and 1 fumble recovery. New defensive coordinator, Schmedding, comes from Auburn and is a Washington native. And he leaves Auburn after the firing of Brian Harsin, the head coach. So wasn't going to be retained, and the Washington State Cougars will gladly accept him here. He will add to an already good pass defense, where last season he had the Tigers 224 passing yards allowed on average per game. And in a conference with a lot of good quarterbacks, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, Cam Rising, Penix, you're going to need him to help out and keep the passing totals low. And kind of like I mentioned, using a 4-2-5 will allow those DBs to really show off and be a strong part of the defense in that back half. Not only that, he's helped develop defensive line talent at Boise State. He put a couple in the pros, and most recently for Auburn, Derek Hall, who's now in the NFL, getting drafted in the second round last season. Cougars got Coach Dicker the personnel he wanted. Now it's time to flex a little bit. And the most important thing here is going to be the over 6.5, plus 140 on DraftKings. Their schedule, very favorable, and especially on the road. They start off the season at Colorado State. That is a win. No doubt about that one, playing an inferior opponent. They then host Wisconsin. They beat Wisconsin last season. Luke Fickell takes over his first road test of the season. He doesn't have his players in yet. The quarterback situation's a little murky. Not a surefire win, but one that I think the Cougars will be favored in. They then play host to Northern Colorado, another non-Power 5 school. That puts them at 2 wins on the season. Their first test at home in the Pac-12 is against Oregon State. And the Beavers, good program, had a great season last year. A favorable matchup at home for Washington State, could go either way. They then travel to UCLA. And at this point, UCLA will likely have the quarterback ironed out. But if it is Moore, who is expected to be the QB for UCLA, that will be a game that Washington State can sneak in and win there. Or if it is Garbers, the backup, he is the less talented of the two, and another opportunity for Washington State to take that one. They then play host to University of Arizona. Jaden DeLora returns from that team, but Jedd Fisch is a couple years away from being a competitive squad, so that is a surefire win for the Cougars. They then travel to Oregon. Bo Nix returns. I think this is going to be a loss for them on the season. Traveling on the road and against a really good offense will be a tough one for them. They then follow that up with 3 of the worst in the Pac-12 at Arizona State. I think Dillingham is in the same spot that Jedd Fisch is, a couple years away from truly being competitive. And the Washington State Cougars beat them last year. They then play host to Stanford, the bottom of the Pac-12. Washington State should handle this one. At Cal is a rung above Stanford, not talented enough to beat the Cougars. And they then play host to the rival, the Washington Huskies. This one, going to be a tough game. And who knows, depending on how the season goes for Washington, if Washington is where they want to be in the top of the Pac-12, then it could get a little dicey for them. But ultimately, I think Washington is a better squad. So when I tally it up, I have 5 wins here for Washington State that they should have easily. That then leaves 5 games at home against Wisconsin, at home against Oregon State, at UCLA. I think those 3 are very winnable games, and they will likely be favored in 2 of them. This team has all the offensive pieces and kept a good position group that propelled them to success last year, along with both experienced coordinators that are looking to make their mark. Washington State over 6.5 wins is going to be pick number 2. Thank you all for listening. Hope you enjoy the breakdown. Please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what else we should talk about for college football as we get ready here to go in a couple months. As always, thank you very much and see you next time.